So, David, what did you think? Well, actually, we've got two Davids, so we'll start with David Wright.
Thanks, Steph. We spoke a lot this morning about consistency and constancy of purpose. So I suppose my first reaction is I'm delighted that the Secretary of State has remained consistent in his views throughout his term in office about the importance of innovation and the support for it. And we've had, I'm delighted to say, really unwavering support for the catapult network, for the high-value manufacturing catapult in particular, and for CPI clearly as a member of that. So that's a great illustration, I think, some of that consistency that we've been seeking and we recognise as being so important. I'm delighted that Vince believes that we need to double the innovation budget. I'd like to offer my help to him to find it in any way, whatever that we can. It must be lurking down the back of some departmental sofa somewhere. So if you've got the odd 500 million, then please let us know where it is. So yeah, I think as a starter, I'm pleased with the consistency.
So we've got two Davids and two Steves. So Steve Elliott, tell us a bit about your reaction to it. Interesting, he was talking about the long-term agenda again. We heard the Shadow Secretary saying that too.
I agree. I think the Vince as a constant, I think, is a very helpful thing. But I also agree that it's probably very dull copy for you and the media, because I think this is about continuity. He talked a bit about we're still playing catch-up. I think if you look at the public and the private investment in research and development for the UK, it's something that's under 2% of GDP, and you look to where Korea, the States, France and Germany are, they're ahead of us. So I think this is early days. I think it's very interesting that he keeps calling our growth partnership the chemicals growth partnership. That's great. It's actually a chemistry growth partnership, because I think there's a very important link that we increasingly need to make between the chemicals and the chemistry that underpins a lot of the manufacturing strategy and the industrial strategy that he's been articulating. So I think it's very good stuff. If I've got one slight concern, it's that we're still new to this, and the Hauser report and the rollout, I would just want to make sure that, as we would do with any business, is making sure that we build on what we have 3 or 4 years in, rather than we look to immediately expand the offering.
Yeah, David Cairncross.
Yes, thanks. I think I'm very pleased that he referred to our CBI event, which he attended, and which, as he said, involved senior representatives from 2 other parties. One of the great attractions of the catapult model is, of course, that it has parents on both sides of the political divide, because as many people will know, the Conservative Party invited Sir James Dyson to produce a report on this sort of thing before the last election, and he recommended something rather similar to what Herman Hauser had suggested to Peter Mandelson, and now it's been endorsed by a Liberal Democrat Secretary of State. So that is encouraging for continuity. That's part of the good news. I'm glad to say also that the event was reported to some extent and even featured on the Today programme, although our Deputy Director General was asked, why are we talking about something as dull as supply chains at a time like this? And I think we would want to emphasise the importance of supply chains, and enough has been said on that for no need for me to say more, but that was what the report which we were launching in that event was about, which also recommended, among other things, that there should be a doubling of funding for innovation in the course of the next Parliament. We actually put a time frame to that. Whether that will happen or not depends on quite a lot of things. Clearly, the big battle is going to come next year with the spending review that will follow the election of the next Parliament and the formation of the next government. Nobody knows what it's going to look like. I'd mention one thing to bear in mind is that, of course, the UK Independence Party may be represented or may even have a voice in the formation of the next government, and there may be arguments to make there. Again, I won't try and rehearse them in detail, but people have referred to migration and We had a speaker from the European Commission here. So the innovation as a landscape goes broader than the remit of this or even the Treasury, but certainly whatever can be done to make the kind of case that economists and Treasury officials like will be doing good work in this way.
Steve Fletcher, were you convinced by what Vince said?
Yes, I was. I mean, I was writing down positive and negative things. I couldn't find much negative to write about, except maybe if I was being pessimistic, I'd say that there is a move to have more and more catapults, which in principle I think is right, but clearly the resources need to go with it. And I think we're all very keen that the high value manufacturing catapult, for which CPI is a part, should have at least as much funding and hopefully more funding than it has at the moment, so it can carry on what it's doing, and the KTN and Innovate UK can work with it to make things even better.
Was there anything missing that any of you thought that kind of stood out to you?
The promise of the cash would have been fantastic. But I think let's be realistic about this. I mean, autumn statement announcement, sort of next week. None of us knows what the outcome of that. It's a complete mystery to us until pretty much the day it's announced. We know it's a very, very competitive environment. I think most of the people in this room can make a reasoned, logical, economic argument why investing more in the very activities that generate growth for the future is a good thing if you're trying to spend money on other things as well. Regrettably, the logical argument isn't the one that always wins out in the short term. We're in a difficult position. It would have been great if Vince could have taken today as a platform to announce that we're going to get a really positive autumn statement outcome, but we wouldn't have expected that. So, is there anything missing? There's nothing else I would have expected to have heard.
Would anyone like to ask a question? Oh, yes, gentleman at the back there. I'll just get a microphone to you.
Thanks very much. People talk a lot about the sort of German model and the Fraunhofers, and now we're trying to at least match that kind of stronger linkage. But another great aspect of Germany is the regional banking system, where you have a set of banks who really their remit is much more to deal directly with companies and to finance companies and not just do financial dealings. And actually a lot of those regional banks are not involved in a lot of financial engineering and pure finance. And we have nothing like that anymore. It's completely gone in this country, any form of regional banking. Now, the British taxpayer owns a very large chunk of the banking system at the moment. So why aren't we reconstructing the banking system to be, along maybe the similar kind of lines? Let's take RBS, split it up into regional banks, and have them without any form of investment banking or financial engineering, and have them as a totally locally, regionally focused banking system. I think we've completely failed to take advantage of, a step change in banking. It's time to reconsider something. We just try to re-engineer the whole thing back again so we can sell it off, and the whole machine of a London-based banking system with no connection to industry, no genuine remit to only deal with business finance is just being frittered away.
Yeah, let's get some thoughts on that, because Vince did touch on the access to finance issue. Steve Elliott, do you want to start us on that?
Thank you. I think it works both ways, because we were talking a little bit before Vince spoke that I think there's a job to do on our side, and if I speak as a trade association, I think there's a job to do to support business in terms of its ability and competence around finance. And if whether that's a sifting or a facilitation job to ensure that the businesses are ready, or the right businesses are pointed in the right direction. I think regionalism is here to stay, one way or another, and I think we need to do a lot more around cluster formation and the extent to which a sector like ours that is clustered could start to look at all of that support mechanism around it. So I don't think it's certainly not the craziest idea I've heard.
Yeah. David Cairncross, just on this idea as well, when Vince said about he's the biggest venture capitalist in the country, I mean, what's the reaction to that? That sounded quite scary to me.
Yes, I think he's certainly right that he sits on top of, doesn't personally dole out a lot of enterprise capital, and it's also true that there was a big downturn in venture capital funding here. I think a lot of steps have been taken in the right direction. Somebody referred to them earlier on today in terms of things like the Enterprise Investment Scheme and promotion of incentives for entrepreneurship. One of the challenges is being able to bring that kind of the early stage startups further into growing to a middle size and a potentially large size, and growing that kind of business. And I think that one of the things there, certainly there's a role for banks, maybe there's a role for more mechanisms around other sources of finance, including maybe more equity finance for growth as well, more generally.
Steve Fletcher, what do you think?
I think the question has a very good point. I think there is some need for restructuring, but I think things are getting better. I mean, there's a business bank that Vince spoke about, and maybe the venture capital and the business angels network is starting to sort of recover from the crash. I think the UK is probably as good as anybody in Europe, perhaps with the exception of Germany in terms of its public funding processes. So actually, we've got very good processes through Innovate UK and elsewhere to help companies find public money and collaboration. But we do need to do better on.
Yeah, David Wright, is there enough support? I think.
Is there enough support through the banks or
yes,
through
still on finance.
Well, I'd echo Steve's thing. It's a very interesting idea, and I think you talk to any grouping of businesses and small businesses in particular, and access to finance is always an issue. It's always a problem that's going to be raised. But again, just to pick up on something that Steve mentioned about the businesses being attractive enough to be invested in. One of the things that I'm surprised actually we haven't heard mentioned more today, I'm surprised and delighted in some ways that we haven't heard more about is SMEs, because I think as a three-letter acronym it's dreadfully overworked and dreadfully misunderstood, simply because of the vast variety of capability we have within the SME community. But one of the things I'd like to just make people aware of or remind people of is some of the objectives that we have through the support that we're putting into businesses, SMEs included, and something that we're addressing with even more vigour through the HVM catapult, the high value manufacturing catapult, is actually, by working with the SMEs, is making them more attractive to potential investors. I think there is an issue that says that if we're taking people through a structured innovation process, the confidence that investors have that those companies will get to the end of that process in that sort of immediate sort of pre-commercialisation phase is higher, and therefore, by definition, less of a risk. So I think there are two aspects to this. The financing side has to be refreshed, but we have to do what we can to make businesses more investable. And I think the work that's being done, certainly through high value manufacturing and the other catapults, is a serious and important part of that.
Should we take another question? Yes. We'll just get a microphone to you. Sorry. There we go. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment about access to finance, because that was something that was recognised in the North East around the time CPI was created, that it was part of the platform of support that was necessary. Now, there has been some conspicuous success in the North East on this, starting with proof of concept funding, which wasn't around 10 years ago. And it's absolutely crucial to allow young entrepreneurs and innovators to be able to develop and make their ideas more investor ready. But it is about working with different institutions and tailoring the finance to meet the continuum finance required that was referred to on the panel. it is happening, it does work, it's actually created much more interest in developing SMEs, certainly in the Northeast. It's been worked with the European Investment Bank, so it's a combination of local funding, government funding, recycled funds from earlier investments, but it is working and doing well. So I sort of commend that to other regions. There's no doubt about it, venture capital is not understood outside of an individual region. If you rely on London to provide venture capital for the Northeast, it will not happen because people do not go into the regions. So you have to create your own access to finance within the regions you serve.
Yeah, it's a good point about regionality, isn't it? And about how do you overcome that issue of, you know, we're still ruled by London for lots of things, and how do you create that wealth within the regions? Who wants to start us off on that? Steve, Fletcher.
Yes, I mean, you make a good point. I think there are some things actually that Innovate UK is already doing or starting to do around things like the Enterprise Europe Network, it will shortly, I think, be controlling and operating in the UK, and that will have a number of regional centres which are designed to help businesses with a number of things, including access to finance. The KTN, although it's traditionally worked with public finances, is also starting to build up regional activities and access to finance activities. So I think we've got a long way to go, but the problem is well recognised, and I think we need to get better,
Yeah. And it's interesting hearing you talk there again about something that's happening regionally that's doing well. Do you think there's enough support out there for businesses to find out about these other things that people are doing? David Wright?
No.
Next question. Yeah.
Next question. No, of course there is. It's a long-standing problem, and one that I don't think we're close enough to solving yet. Is our businesses aware enough of all the support that they could be taking advantage of, and are they using it in the right way? No, of course they're not. And I think there are two or three issues connected to that. One is, we run the great danger of sitting around the committee table and designing things that we think are going to be useful to businesses without actually asking businesses what it is that would be useful to them. And so we are overloaded with initiatives. Some of them will run for 2 or 3 years and then disappear because they were apparently unsuccessful. The reason they were unsuccessful could have been they were probably duplicating something else that was, or very close to duplicating something else that was already around. Very badly communicated, so people didn't understand what it was that they were trying to do, and worst of all, probably quite bureaucratic in the way that people can access it. So we have too many initiatives running across the UK. I mean, it's just a fact, we do. But we don't communicate it well enough. We don't engage with the business groups that businesses engage with well enough. We don't have that sort of community feeling, either regionally or nationally, with things that work. We have a great habit of launching a programme and saying, done that, without actually massaging it, without caring for it, without nurturing it and adapting it. And it seems that any new administration, any new minister, any new civil servant wants to do something new.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a colleague earlier about a programme that we used to run in the West Midlands, which engaged school children, teachers, careers advisors with manufacturing business, and it worked wonderfully well. But then someone else introduces something else, and we need to consolidate, we need to coordinate, and we need to invest and love, and we need to communicate.
Yeah, David Cairncross, voice of business, why don't we communicate well enough about it?
Partly because there's too many things to say, and in a sense that follows from what David was saying, that it's difficult to give a simple, clear explanation of something that is very complicated. I think that some of the things that have happened, at least in drawing more of the business support and advice networks into Innovate UK, it probably represents a move in the right direction, because at least there is one overarching umbrella and there's a chance for more progress. But there are a lot of other things happening elsewhere, and I think that there are a lot of things which it's a continuing important effort not to come up with a new idea, but to make sure that what is already out there gets used and gets benefited from.
Steve?
Yeah, I think, when we say more of the same with a general election in mind, I think it plays to this one as well. Please God, not more initiatives, because I think there is sometimes an assumption that because we have issued something that people have understood it. I think also there is sometimes an undervaluing of effective signposting. And if I maybe just go back to the question, the comment earlier about the regions, and I think there's an awful lot behind what the Chancellor is talking about by this Northern Powerhouse.
Fiscal devolution.
Yeah, and I think I missed the morning session, but we're looking at a national formulation centre, and whilst we might not be looking at new bricks and mortar, equally we're not looking at something in London or the south. So I think that's quite important.
It's interesting, from doing this myself and looking at the devolution issue that everyone's talking about at the moment off the back of the Scottish referendum and how regions are going to benefit from it, is the whole infrastructure question and what difference that can make, because we all know above Watford really it can be really tough to get around, and there's a lot of infrastructure that needs doing. How important is that, do you think? I don't know who wants to start us off on that. Just in terms of, is there enough being done, do you think, with something like infrastructure, Steve Fletcher?
Well, there is, but I'd echo what other people have said, that if we're not careful, it gets fragmented. And the good news, I think, is that within Innovate UK, in the family, you've got the catapults, you've got the KTM, you've got the Enterprise Europe Network, or you will have, and you've got the National Contact Point. So, for example, all support for Europe will be under one umbrella. The LEPs are a good thing, but we do need to make sure we understand how to, but they're all different, they're all obviously fragmented, they may all be heading towards the same thing or they may not. So we do need to try and have some kind of communication so we are able to pull all this together and make some kind of sense when we go out and talk to companies who want to know basically how they can get support for innovation and for growth.
Yeah. Do you think businesses care, David Wright, about the Northern Powerhouse, this idea of making it the northern regions working together to have more control over their own money? Does it matter to your industry, I think?
I think it probably matters to businesses who are in the north. Does it matter? It matters in so much that I think it's giving emphasis to regional activity. And from my perspective, and I'll keep it a very sort of selfish perspective, that whatever we can do to get more people taking advantage of what there is on offer, and sort of pretty much what Steve was just saying, then if that means we take a greater regional focus so people can get access to facilities, access to finance, access to expertise, access to knowledge, if focusing that on a regional basis is what makes that happen, then let's take a regional focus. What I don't want to see happen is unnecessary and inappropriate regional skewing. So I think it is appropriate that we have agencies who can do development regionally. Oh gosh, that sounds like a regional development agency. Joking aside, I think it is important that we brigade our support and our access at a local level, at the level at which it is appropriate.
We were talking earlier in a previous panel session, and we had a great question from somebody from the LEP, one of the LEPs in the North East LEP, talking about what could be done to get more cohesion between business and what they do. And one of the things that came out from the panel debate was this idea of, there needs to be more nationally happening. But yet, when we're talking to the gentleman over here about a lot is done from London, things need to be more regional, how do you get that compromise between making sure there isn't too many things on offer to everyone and you're trying to work out all the different things you can be part of, but also not losing sight of the national picture of things? Who wants to start us off on that? David Cairncross.
Well, I don't know the answer, but I think that one of the things it would be good to be able to find a way of encouraging is more mechanisms and more support for collaboration and cooperation between LEPs in the same neighbourhood. I mean, 39 Steps makes a good title for a story. but 39 LEPs seems an awful lot, and if there is a way, whether you call it sort of invention of regions by the back door or what, I don't know, but if there is a way of promoting a cooperative, collaborative approach rather than a competitive one, I'm sure that would do good.
Yeah. Okay, should we take another question from the floor? Yes, Ralph.
Hello. If I can just make a comment in relation to what our previous speaker said. The funds that he was talking about are the Jeremy funds, which are coming to an end. Jeremy 1 ends in the northeast at the end of 2015. The Jeremy 2 Project Board is now going through a consultation with local industry about how the Jeremy 2 programme from 2016 onwards should be designed. And so it's a bit of a pitch, really. If there's anyone in the room who would like to make representation to either the Tees Valley LEP or the North East LEP that can feed back to the Jeremy 2 Project Board, we'd be delighted to structure it to meet needs.
Yeah, okay. And they should maybe come and have a chat with you about that, if there's anyone in the room who wants to know a bit more about it. Is there any other questions? Can't see any hands. Just, I guess, to summarise things for us then, what do you think, I'll start with challenges and then go to opportunities. What do you think, your eyebrows raising there, thinking, oh no. So I'm going to start with you first. So just tell us, what do you think the main challenges are in the industry at the moment in terms of, getting the growth, getting more innovation, and then also we'll come back to what you think the opportunities are. But just start us off on challenges.
Well, I'll just focus on one, because
Yeah.
I sort of hog the floor. But it's been mentioned many, many times today. I think it is about skills and talent development. Yeah, that's the first big challenge that I think we need to recognise.
Yeah, and what do you think the opportunity is?
We've touched on it many, many times. And, I think migration is an issue that we've got to get the right answer to. It's too important to ignore. It's too important to make it a party political debate or argument. But we've also got to focus on growing our own. The big thing about skills is it's not a quick fix, and it never has been, and it never will be. And we have to invest in all areas of the skills development, the talent development. The High Value Manufacturing Catapult is doing some great work in skills development. It will not deliver its full potential if it doesn't deliver the people as well as it's developing the technologies. So that's well recognised, and that activity will grow in strength and importance. I think the opportunities are that we can put our own house in order with the tools we have available, as well as some solving or at least improving the migration issue.
Steve Elliott, what's your challenge? And
if I sit here and look across the whole of the EU, then I can feel not quite smug, but confident about what we're doing in the UK and the way the UK is performing. And the challenge, I think, around that is it's a big, bad world. And as much as we're talking here about continuity and long-termism, the clock is ticking, I think, given the pressures that we see on the supply side from the States and the demand side from elsewhere. So I think that, and the extent to which, and it plays to much bigger issues like Europe, the extent to which we can get the whole continent, I think, to do, well, certainly pick up the sense of urgency that I think we have here. I think that's the biggest challenge. And in terms of opportunities, I think a couple of things. And one is, we have just, again, at a European level, surveyed the chemical and chemistry using industries in terms of favourability, and the UK comes out highest in terms of favourability, which people might not instinctively get, but it does. And I think we need to build on that. It plays to Ian's earlier comment about starting to talk up the positive and the opportunity, which I think is something we're doing in a small way in the Chemistry Growth Partnership, but in a bigger way in all of the sectors that this industrial policy and strategy is addressing.
yeah. David Cairncross, what's your challenge? And
I think, well, something which strikes me, while taking on board and agreeing with what's just been said, something that's a bit of a kind of challenge, a kind of opportunity, maybe not so much so for this sector, these industries, as for some other parts of manufacturing, but quite a lot, which is, we know that this is still, and we hope will continue to be, a great place to do research. It's getting a better and better place to do innovation, thanks to the CPI, other catapults and other developments. What we would like to be able to do is to find some way of promoting more manufacturing on the back of that, the next stage. And there may be a way of doing that, possibly through some variation on the research and development tax credits, maybe some other way. But I think that's the next stage if we want to capture value and get the full range of benefits for what we've already got.
And Steve, Fletcher, for you.
Okay, I think the big challenge, I mean, we've talked a lot about onshoring and getting the getting the chemical supply chain back in the UK, so that the automotive sector and the aerospace sector and all the other sectors in the UK that are strong sectors and are going to continue in the UK successfully can actually buy their chemicals from the UK. And that is a challenge, because we're kind of fighting against cost differentials in other parts of the world. However, I think on the positive side, the playing field is becoming more level for all sorts of reasons. We were talking this morning about sort of time to commercialisation of products, or maybe processes as well. And something I heard from the pharmaceutical industry is that a new chemical synthesis for making a drug that is invented in year X will take X plus 30 to actually get into a production scale, which is a frighteningly long time. So the opportunity is for the catapults and CPI in particular to bring that right down, because if we want to have onshoring in the UK, we have to have process technology that is cost effective and competitive in the UK, and there are some technologies like that that are already around. Unfortunately, they tend to be sold into the Far East at the moment, and what we want is for that technology to actually be operating within the UK. And CPI is the ideal place to do the de-risking for UK industry, which is generally a bit risk averse in these things. So, so big opportunity, I think.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you very much for your time. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, just one final point. And just something David said just reminded me, and it's something I believe very strongly in, and Mike Gregory mentioned it earlier. We talk about the modern definition of manufacturing, right from R&D through to sort of service and end of life. 7 or 8 steps, and I really think the middle step of that production, making stuff, actually really matters. We mustn't exclude that very significant middle part of making things. Because, my view, making things anchors developing products. And developing products anchors the innovation infrastructure, and the innovation infrastructure helps anchor research. And actually, some of the knowledge-based activities are more transportable than people recognise at times. But if you've got significant investment in the act of making things, we stand a better chance of anchoring the rest.
Okay. Thank you to the 2 Steves and the 2 Davids for that. Please give them a round of applause.